I used to always just do it, then I give people the option, and then Jessica just told me just leave it, so. Have a nice meeting. Thank you. Thanks, Barbara. Good weekend. Same to you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. So welcome to the January 17th meeting of the Compensation Commission of Scio Township. We are now live and recording. And I had my head turned the other way, but I'm guessing that maybe Jeff and Jonathan got sworn in. All right.
G2 is done.
Okay, so let's officially call the meeting to order. Call meeting of the Compensation Commission to order. And our first task is to approve of the agenda. And I guess the one thing that we need to change is we don't need to have G2 like we just heard. So with that, something else? Did you just? I thought you just raised your hand.
I did not.
Oh, maybe you were excited about getting this meeting started, or no? Just
And eliminating one item on the.
oh, okay, all right. With that change, is the agenda okay with everybody? Looking for a motion to.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right.
Mr. Chairman, did I miss the call of the roll?
No, you didn't. We need to do that.
You're right. I missed that. I was just so excited about having our new members sworn in. So let's call the roll. And who wants to run down the roll? I guess the secretary would normally do that, but we don't have one yet. No,
I was, go ahead.
all right, John Boyd present, Renee,
Present.
or I'm sorry, should be Commissioner, shouldn't it? Right. And Commissioner Ergut,
Present.
Commissioner Greenberg,
Present.
Commissioner Jackson.
Present.
What do we do now, Chief? We're done with the roll?
You go to the minutes.
That's great. Okay. So, actually, let's see, the minutes for the 10th are in here, I think page 4. And anybody, in attendance at the meeting last Friday have corrections that they, want to have in our minutes? All right, hearing none.
I make motion to approve the minutes of January 10th. Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, motion carried. Okay, next up, we have communications to the Compensation Commission. And I'm not aware of any. Anybody else? Okay, so let's move on to public comment. Do we have anybody in the, let's check, make sure, I don't see anybody in the present that wants to comment. Do we have anybody, Aurora, online that has their hands up?
We do. Go ahead, Pam.
Thank you, Pam Boyd, a Scio resident. I want to welcome Jonathan and Jeff to this commission. Your experience in Scio Township will be of great benefit, and I welcome you both. Thank you.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
Don't see anyone at this time.
Nobody, okay. All right, let's jump into new business then. And since we kind of didn't have the full group last week, we kind of wanted to see if we could get Attorney Fink to review some of his notes from last week and potentially add a few things he's learned since then.
I don't think I have anything I've learned since then, but I will review my comments even more quickly than last week for you as soon as I get them open. And actually, I may not need to because I know both of the new commissioners received the written information that I had provided before your first meeting last week. So I will just remind you of a couple of things. First, your statutory duty is to determine salaries for the 7 board members. That's your job. You have to have it done by 45 days from last week, and that takes you, I believe, to February 22nd or 25th, whatever that last Monday in February is. I've never seen a compensation commission go more than 4, maybe 5 sessions in either of the communities that I've assisted compensation commissions with. And the methodology, excuse me, is totally up to you. As a reminder that should you should you determine a reduction in salary, it would not take effect until the next term of the people in office. So that would be in November of 2028. Otherwise, your determination, if it's not rejected by the board, takes effect at the beginning of the next fiscal year for Scio Township, which I think is April 1st. The board, if it wants to reject a determination, must do so on a 2/3 vote. The board could vote 4-3 to reject it, and it would still be adopted because that wouldn't be a 2/3 vote. The other compensation is not up to you. I will remind you that the Board of Trustees has asked that you do the 4 offices separately in 4 separate resolutions, 1 for trustees and then 1 for clerk, treasurer, and supervisor. They've also asked that you make recommendations about compensation, not salary, but compensation for the volunteer boards. It's not a statutory requirement. It's not required in the ordinance, but the board has asked that you do that. And so should you do that, it's advisory only. The last thing is you're subject to the Open Meetings Act. So you should not have communications that would be deliberations of a quorum of the board outside of an open meeting. You can talk to each other. You can go places, not as a group, except at social events. And as I described to one of you, I think it was Commissioner Greenberg, if you run into a trustee or something at the grocery store, you don't have to turn around and go the other way, even though the board has said they encourage each other not to essentially lobby the compensation commission. There's no statutory prohibition on communication with your neighbors and the folks that you work with. So you just want to make sure that the way you conduct your business is done in accordance with and in the spirit of the Open Meetings Act. I think that's the overview, other than to say there is no structure mandated by law on how you do this. I've spoken to Ms. Northrup about this a couple of times. She's here to assist you if you want some particular information. She can serve as staff and help you do it, but neither the attorney nor the human resources office is going to say, here's our recommendation for your determination, and here's how we came to it, because that's not our job, that's yours.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for Attorney Fink regarding the OMA. So as I understand it, the current interpretation of the OMA is that commissioners must attend meetings in person and not remotely. So there is one date where we might potentially meet where I will be out of town. I would like to know what my options and rights are if I chose to attend that meeting virtually as a member of the public.
So as you noticed, Scio Township does allow public participation via Zoom. That's not required by the statute anywhere. That's something that the township is determined to do. You could do that. You could attend essentially as a member of the public and watch. You could not participate in deliberations. You could not vote. And so the only time you would address this body, if you wanted to, would be during public comment. There's no prohibition from you tuning in to watch the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay. Other response to, okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
And the next thing that we probably should be doing is electing a vice chair and a secretary. The vice chair typically steps in if the chair is away. The secretary takes notes and puts together draft for the minutes. And then, in terms of the normal process, does Christie or somebody from the township edit the draft minutes? Or is that normally the secretary's?
I don't know.
Oh, okay. All right, so I don't know the answer to that either. I've never been a secretary, but anybody wanna volunteer? Let's start the vice chair role first and discuss that if anybody seems to want to jump in. A lot of people looking at their desktops now with the. Wow, this is. Thoughts, Jeff?
Yeah, unfortunately, Fridays are a bad day for me to step in and be vice chair.
Okay,
We can change those dates.
this is actually true. We're not tied officially to Fridays, but let's see if maybe somebody else is.
Fridays are pretty open for me. If you needed, I think we know each other's phone numbers.
Okay, all right.
I don't mean to, I'm new, so it's not, I tip my hat to somebody else here before I step in the way.
No, this is my first.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's-
Well, you guys realize if he takes the vice chair,
No.
somebody else has to be secretary, right? I mean.
Actually, we don't have to have.
That's
a
my play right
secretary
there,
for-
John. Don't give it away.
Well, actually, so we don't actually have to have it.
That's what it said.
I suppose
Should we do
that.
vice chair first?
Yeah, so,
Chair slash secretary. It's a small
no,
group.
no, hold on.
I'm
a
gonna have
second.
to back off on any meeting minutes because I am a terrible.
Yeah, and I can take notes, but I can't.
All right, so it sounds like we have a motion, to,
I'd like to make a motion for Jonathan Greenberg for the position of vice chair for Compensation Commission.
and Jean, you're seconding that, discussion. I think he'd be a fine person in that role. All those in favor, say aye.
I-
Opposed? All right, we now have a vice chair.
I didn't vote because I know him.
Yeah.
Excuse myself. All right.
Okay, all right,
Let's actually, may I?
sure.
One of your applications, and you know, we don't need to do that one again, but this sometimes comes up. There are very few circumstances under which a member of a public body doesn't have the responsibility to vote. It's usually only when there's a conflict of interest. And as I said, I don't think it matters. And this one, Commissioner Greenberg, and for the benefit of the other two, Commissioner Klubeck asked last week about when it comes to the road advisory committee, if this body decides to make a recommendation, her process, because her husband is a member of that committee, and then she would ask this body to recuse herself, and that discussion would happen without her. But in terms of the rest of it, for example, and I'm not asking, but if anyone is thinking that because you supported somebody in the last election or supported an opponent in the last election or any of those considerations, whether you should recuse yourself from the discussion or vote on the determination of salary, that would not be a reason to not vote.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so we should try to elect a secretary. Do we have any volunteers from the
Full disclosure, no, listen to, I just wanna, full disclosure of when I came to my first meeting. I was unaware of the timeline of the 45 days. I know that Jeff has mentioned he has a conflict on the 31st. I had also mentioned that I was going to have a 2-week conflict, that I was not aware of this parameters. So that I think I don't feel comfortable with the situation of the secretary because of that. And I just would like to make that clear that it doesn't make sense for me starting in when I'm going to be missing 2 meetings. I was unaware of the 45-day timeline.
understand?
Sorry.
So,
Reservations already made.
Attorney Fink, then, how can we work without a secretary? And it sounds like statutorily we can do that. But
The only requirement is to elect a chair. It would be good if someone were keeping records, but you could also enlisted a volunteer for each meeting to take notes and present the minutes to the rest of the body informally.
okay.
You might have noticed that your minutes from last week came from me because I happened to be watching and noticed that there was only one opportunity to get minutes to the rest of you because you were all working, and so I was taking notes myself, and so I prepared those, but you could just have take turns acting as the scribe for a meeting and submit those for review and approval at the next meeting.
Okay, let's try and work that, and who wants to take notes for this meeting? Jeff, I think that's you.
Oh,
Is that smile I saw on your face?
Shrug, there goes the point.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay,
I will volunteer for this meeting.
excellent.
Thanks, Jeff.
I'll send you my notes, Commissioner.
Thank you.
yeah, if we have a outline,
Yeah,
that's good.
okay, so,
Just one question. When are the minutes, draft minutes due for review? Is there a deadline?
They'll be adopted at the next meeting, so
Okay.
it's
by
helpful.
1:59 next Friday.
Yeah, it is helpful for Christie to have notes on a draft minutes in the file that she posts online. And then she likes to have that done Tuesday kind of stuff, or the
Okay.
information, so she.
I guess my next question is, where do I send the draft minutes, right?
Yeah, and so you can send them to me or to Christie. Or maybe both. And that applies if anybody else has contributions they want to make to the minutes. Okay, so next up, we have a review of our notes and our information. And Aurora, do you have a presentation that you want to make about research that you've been able to do, or?
I do not.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, all right, so in our meeting last week, we went through some of those items that would be good to have. And so, you have your notes from,
Local comparisons.
Yeah.
CPI was, I mentioned 3.1 for those commissioners that weren't here last week.
okay,
So the CPI is 3.1, and I am gathering a list of local comparisons with the information, of course. So waiting on some of the information from that.
okay.
When do you think we?
Yeah, would we be able to have that for our next meeting, you know?
We could try for next Friday, yes, and is it okay to ask how many you're looking for? Are you looking for a set number of comparables of comparison municipalities, or?
Yeah, typically, we'd like at least 3. But if it's a situation where you have a database of that information, and you have 7 or 8 similar municipalities, then that would be great. Commissioner Klubeck, did you say you'll be absent next Friday?
No, I will be here next Friday.
Okay,
Yes, it's
All
the 31st is the first.
oh, okay,
one that I-
Do we want to change that?
yeah, so we probably just should not have a meeting on the 31st
If
then.
you were gone.
Right, all right, let's come back to that. In terms of the process for what we want to be gathering information for and decisions we want to be making. In the previous, so this is back in 2023, we kind of put together a methodology in significant part through Commissioner Brandt. And that was kind of 4 different data points that we wanted to collect and then make a decision based on that. And the first was just establishing the date of last increases for each position. Right? And so, if you can grab for us the date of last increases for each of the four positions, just so we have that. The second, data point, is, the comparison communities. And so that's what, Aurora was just talking about. And then the third task is like, applying either market value or CPI adjustments or both. And just some background on that, we recognize that South Township tends to be a pretty affluent township. At the same time, we do have higher cost of living here than up in northern Michigan, or, you know, depending on where the other communities might be. We do want to be sensitive to that, because that, of course, impacts our ability to, you know, attract a certain skill set, particularly for the you know, clerk and treasurer positions, I think. And then the last thing we want to make sure that we're, you know, comparing apples to apples is looking at the time obligations involved. Like in our township, the supervisor is a half-time position, clerk is a full-time position, and make sure those are accounted for, because that's not always the case. There are, I guess, a lot of townships where I guess the supervisor is doing other work, and in some, the clerk is doing assessment work or something. That South Township is the only place other than Ann Arbor I've ever really lived, so that all seemed very strange to me, but when we came across that 2 years ago, it's interesting, and so we incorporated that into our discussions. Now, that isn't saying that we have to use those particular discussion points to come up with our values, but it was pretty useful 2 years ago. And remember, this commission started, 4 years ago? So it didn't exist before then, and just trying to have an easier path to do what we need to do. That's probably a pretty good starting point, so.
So this commission was just started 4 years ago.
Yes, yeah.
Before that.
I did not.
You know, I don't recall what was done. Jim, do you happen to know?
There's 3 different ways to do salaries for general law townships. The first is if a township has a general meeting of the electors, which is an annual meeting, which Scio Township doesn't, but some smaller townships either used to or still do. The community comes together and votes on the salaries. I don't know of any local government that does it that way, but that's part of the statute. Otherwise, the board itself determines the salaries and has to set their pay. And then the third option is to adopt a compensation commission ordinance, which is, as you know, from looking at our ordinance and the statute that I sent you, pretty rigid in terms of what your authority and responsibility and even the time frame for working is. So in Scio's case, the board of trustees set the salaries for themselves until the compensation commission started in 2021.
Okay. Go ahead.
I have a few questions. Your first point was, one was the date of increase for each position. So in July of 2023, you set salaries for all the positions, which became effective April 1st of 24. So then have they been at that rate, or did they get a cost of living increase in, well, that was last April.
Yeah.
So this year, so the
Yeah, I remember the,
last increase was last April.
Is-
Correct, so I would speak to that, so, there is no increase. And the salary is set for 2 years, so then it would be 4/1/2024, through 3/31, right,
So
so,
they wouldn't get a raise this year,
correct.
even a cost of living.
Correct.
My other question is, I looked at the salaries, the supervisor, her salary was increased from 40,000 to 44,308. That's a 10.77% increase. The trustees went up from 7,500 to 10,000. The treasurer went from 84,000 to 90,000, which was an 18% increase. And the clerk went from 65,000 to 99,000, 38% increase. Is that correct?
I don't think that clerk number sounds correct. You happen to have those?
Could you repeat the clerk?
The clerk salary was 65,000 and it was increased to 99,403.
My reading of that was 84,000 was the clerk's previous salary.
Did I get them
Have to
wrong?
verify that if you'd like.
Maybe I
could
put the
step out
treasurer's
to
wrong.
verify it.
Yeah, that might be.
Yeah, that might be
useful.
helpful.
I know there was, some odd history with the clerk, salary. I don't remember, or I've been blessed to forget some of that, but.
I share your blessing, but I do believe there was an attempt to, or there was a move down in the clerk's salary and then. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah,
It
Alright,
was-
it's a
I
pretty
do have a
thing.
document that shows
Oh.
it was 84,000. Salary of
Okay.
84,000. That was on December of 2021.
And then there was a motion to reduce it to 75,000. Apparently that did not go through. I don't know if the board rejected it or if it was overridden by
Well,
23.
it wouldn't matter because until November 20th of 2024, the clerk's salary could not go down. So I don't remember whether the board accepted it or rejected it. But it doesn't matter because the clerks, even with a unanimous vote by the compensation commission and an acceptance of it by the board of trustees, the clerk salary could not be reduced during that term of office.
Right. And then did 2023 override that by awarding the clerk a new salary?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know where it gets fixed either.
Treasurer was.
Yeah, I will admit that for me, not coming from
Yeah, on page 13 of what we got last week. So
okay.
Scio Township, treasurer received 65 and went up to 90.
Okay,
And let's see what the clerk,
you're talking about the resolution. Yeah,
the clerk went from 84 to 99. Okay,
all right, so that sounds more
okay, so,
familiar.
but still, that was
But the point is that there was some big changes.
a big change, right? But we're not, I think, correct me, is this to identified they've got a lot more duties, their hours, they're doing a lot more, so they caught up with what we compared to other counties.
In
So
yeah,
they had to catch up.
yeah, so that was
And now we're caught up
in theory, yes,
in theory. And what should we increase
yeah.
in that?
So, Aurora, do you,
Okay, so for the clerk, this previous salary was 84,000.
Okay,
It went up to 99,403.
okay,
okay. I read it wrong in all the papers there.
I had the rest of them. if you-
And the treasurer was 65.
yeah. Treasurer went to 90, right?
Treasurer was 65, yes, to 90,000.
Supervisor, is it 44,308?
140.
Supervisor. Correct, 40,000 to 44,308.
Okay. So there are a number of things that make it a little bit complicated. One is that time offset. The second is that, remember, these are elected positions and we're not determining compensation based on the performance of the people in those positions now. That's like
Absolutely.
totally separate. Yeah, it's a compensation
The
for the
duties.
position. Yep. And then the third thing is that the duties, in terms of other marketplaces, the duties can be different, so. Okay,
Do we know, because I know during elections, I think we had 4 elections last year. The clerk is salaried, but entitled to time and a half. What is it, non-exempt or exempt employee? Do they get paid overtime during, because I know they're working like 9 days or hours.
Yeah.
and then
I don't think so.
The pre-elected officials do not receive any additional compensation for doing their jobs, and they don't receive per meeting pay as trustees might. It is possible for the board, not for this body, but for the board to assign them additional duties outside their statutory duties for additional compensation. And for example, after Mr. Kelly retired as the township manager, then Supervisor Knowles took on the manager's duties as well as the supervisor's duties and was paid an additional stipend beyond his salary. And prior to the township having a manager, full-time manager, Supervisor Spalding Clark his salary was broken into 2 things, the supervisor's salary and then the salary that he received for actually being the manager as well. But to answer your question directly, the clerk does not receive overtime for working extra during election periods.
You mentioned 3 elected positions.
Because those are the 3 that come to work every day.
Oh, okay, as opposed to trustees.
As opposed to the trustees who are
Yeah.
not unimportant, but don't have offices that
Okay.
require specific duties.
Okay. And in terms of actual duties, we did
Yeah.
get in, hopefully you guys had all seen that.
You guys give them this? From
This-
last week.
Yeah, this is from our board our committee packet for last
Did our
week's
new
meeting.
members receive from Christie
You
that
have-
Okay, I
information?
think I will need a copy.
Yeah.
Okay,
So we'll need to have Christie send it
Yeah.
to both of them.
yeah.
John, will you take care of? what
I
Christie
will,
wanted?
I can then note of that.
She's off today, but
Yeah.
Tuesdays.
Actually, I'll just forward it.
That's a good idea.
I'll scribble.
Okay, so that's the challenge that we have in front of us. Let me see, anybody have any other questions or requests for data that we can put on Aurora's shoulders?
So when we make our recommendation for their salary, there's never a cost of living increase,
No, we have to incorporate it. We have to, that's,
which we can do then.
well,
Or,
we determine the compensation for the following 2-year period. There is no separate adjustment for CPI. So, sorry, I
so
don't,
we determine their salary, thinking about.
yes,
blah, blah, blah.
I think 2
Yeah.
parts to it, the CPI as well as any kind of other market changes. Or
Yeah.
maybe we're doing
Okay.
things differently.
Yeah, those 4 points sound good to me.
oh, in terms of the
Yeah, 4
reference,
data
yeah.
points, yep.
Yeah.
I missed the 4th one.
Oh.
Okay, date of life increase, which would have been the last.
Oh, the 4th was just making sure we're looking at the same number of hours per week for the obligations of
Oh,
the
okay.
salaried positions. Yeah, I guess I said it right. Okay, well, I think we can see the tasks ahead of us.
Is there any way to get any of the information that we need from Aurora or at a time, so we would have time to review it and process it, or is that asking too much in the week you have coming?
So, I have already requested some comparable information from, nearby communities.
Okay,
Whether or not I'll get all of them
sure.
is the opportunity. And I'm also saying that because Monday we're closed.
Oh, that's right. Okay,
So, I will do my best. I
Sure.
can also provide what I do have, whatever your preference is, if you prefer to have it all together. Or if you have something to try to make a gauge, either way.
I would like it as soon as you get it.
I agree.
Yeah.
We know it's
One
combined.
question though. On the comparable data, will that just be from other townships in Washington County or in the state of Michigan or elsewhere?
It's a whole state.
Okay.
Yeah, depending on what you would like me to get, and I know you had indicated, if I had 7 or 8. So I just need kind of a gauge, on how many you want, and again, keeping in mind what you indicated, size,
Yeah.
affluency, et cetera, of the community versus, if it's one, as
Yeah.
you mentioned, that's further away from us.
Well, it's kind of a give and take here. We want the most data possible. So, did you, see some of the notes from our meeting 2 years ago for the other sources that were used then, or?
Yes,
Okay, so those are some of the sources you're looking at now, I assume.
I'll verify absolutely if those are the sources you want me to use, yes.
Well, we're looking at you to be the expert,
Okay.
so I know at a minimum, we could,
Okay.
use those, but,
And maybe they'll
Absolutely.
be quicker at sending information if they've sent information 2 years ago. I go, they're just asking again and
Yeah.
update it and send it. But
okay.
right I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
in Washington County, there won't be a lot of comparables. Just like a county up north somewhere definitely doesn't have that affluence, as you
Yeah.
said. Scio Township, maybe the Grand Rapids area is a better
Yeah.
area to look at.
Given the data, I like the 3 to 7, shotgun
Yeah,
approach.
reference
Give-
points.
Yeah, give something like that, but, in order to make it easier for you, I wouldn't restrict myself to exactly the same. I mean, we could look at a community that's slightly larger, slightly more affluent and just say, oh yeah, hey, look, we can still build that curve. We can still get data points outside of exactly where we're at to understand that curve and better understand what the actual salaries are. So I would encourage you to look for better off. I don't know, that's a really bad way of saying it. It's my first commission. I'll
That's okay.
mistakes before we're done, but
Elevated status?
no, just different socioeconomic
Yeah, that's
communities.
good. That's a good one. I like
Sorry
that.
about that.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay, so, with that in mind, I'm thinking that we probably should not have a meeting next Friday.
It doesn't sound like we'll have all the information.
Well, of course, then again, we're definitely not gonna have one on the 31st,
May I
right?
ask a question when
Oh, yeah.
regarding the calendar?
Sure.
Since we're talking about it. It was explained to me, and I'm wondering protocol, or perhaps John, you can help with this. And I don't know, I'm old and retired, what can I say? But I don't know everyone else's scheduled demands and whatnot, but I understood that even though we set up and Jim maybe can help, even though we set up the calendar to be Fridays, this and this, what was told to me when I found out about the 45 and was asking the questions was, if we get our data and we know we're gonna have a good work session and that we can do more than one meeting in a week, that if we wanted to meet. So I really feel bad. I have prior commitment. I did not understand clearly when this
My
happened. So,
understanding is
so.
we can set the meetings when we want them and
Yeah.
you just pick Friday.
Yeah, so I was just thinking that if we're feeling like we don't have the data, is it better to wait? And I know we have a deadline. I'm just asking for input from everybody, what they think. I do apologize at my conflict.
What is everybody's availability, like
Yeah.
week of the
I mean,
27th?
I just,
Are you gone that whole?
I'm going away for 2 weeks.
The week of the 27th, you're gone?
That's-
Yes, I'm
Okay.
planning to leave at this point unless something changes. I'm sorry, I have a family thing I'm trying to balance. I was planning to make the 24th and then we would
Oh,
leave.
okay.
So that would mean that I was going to miss 2 in a row, to be very honest. So I'm
Yeah.
very sorry. And
I'm
I'm just saying, I'm happy when I get back here. I know we've got the end date of February. I'll do whatever I have to in the later weeks in February to help with
Well,
making it work.
I think we should be able to get the job done in 3 meetings.
Okay.
From this point forward.
Okay.
So I would be comfortable not having the 24th or the 31st meetings. And then if it looks like we're not gonna be able to get our job done in February, we can have another meeting. But I think, and even though the discussion I outlined with our methodology and stuff, sounds a little difficult, it was mostly getting used to the way this is done versus what it's done in, how it's done in the business world, for me in the past. So, I think we'd be fine not having any other meetings this month. And then we should have all our information, it should be in our hands. And then on the 7th, we have our, Friday meeting then, so.
Because you have adopted your regular meeting schedule, which you were required to do
Yes.
by statute, you'll need a motion to cancel the meetings of the 24th and the 31st.
Yeah. So I probably,
We have to do, if we add extra meetings, we have to make sure we give it 18 hours. Is that correct?
Yes, but if you're going to come together again on the
We can
7th,
do
you can
that when
pick
that
those and
happens.
then
Got it,
have plenty of time to post them.
got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
so I'm looking for a motion to cancel our next 2 January meetings.
Motion that we cancel the 24th and the 31st, and our next meeting be the 7th.
Are you making that motion?
I'm making that motion.
All right, is there a second?
I'll support it.
All right, further discussion?
And then hopefully, or you could send us that information
Yeah.
to all of us.
Beforehand.
We would have
Yeah.
2 or 3 weeks here to get
Absolutely.
the information and review it and come prepared on the 7th.
That's a great idea.
That sounds good to me.
All right, so let's go ahead and vote. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Commissioner Jackson, your Tuesday deadline has been posted.
Thank you.
That's right. We planned that one.
You should have taken it today. I would have had 3 weeks.
Okay, so, other discussion topic before we adjourn for the afternoon.
I have one question. How much communication can we have either individually, I mean, not as a group, but individually outside of this? So say, for example, I get some data and I notice something in it and I want to share that with Jeff. Is that okay?
Yes,
I want to share it with Jeff and John. Is that okay?
yes.
I want to share it with the whole group. Is that okay?
You can share information with the whole group. You knew this was gonna elicit a lawyer thing.
That's what we're looking for. That's what.
So-
Play by the rules.
Think about it in terms of, and I know that you're familiar with the Open Meetings Act and both the idea of the letter of the law and what's clearly the spirit of it, which is two different things in some ways. You can communicate information to the entire body. What you can't do is deliberate. So if you say, I saw this information, I read this article in the Lansing State Journal and thought it was interesting and send it out to everyone, that's fine. When Commissioner Jackson says, yes, but I don't think we should base our salary determination on this article, and Commissioner Hergott says, well, I think we should. Now you're deliberating and you're doing it outside of an open meeting. I'll also remind you that any of your communications that are about the work of the Compensation Commission are subject to the Freedom of Information Act. And as you know, Scio Township residents are very adept at that. And so if you have something that you wouldn't want your grandmother to read in the newspaper, don't put it in an email. Or word it in a way that you wouldn't mind it read. So it's perfectly okay to share information. It's okay for two of you to have a conversation back and forth. I think it's a case, and it's in the Open Meetings Handbook, where they talk about round robins, where you only talk to Chairman Boyd, and then you only talk to Commissioner Hergott, and then you only talk to Commissioner Jackson, and then you only talk to Commissioner Klubeck. But in doing that, you organize your determination. That has been determined to be a violation of at least the spirit of the act, and it's discouraged.
That's
So
very
the
clear.
idea is that this board deliberates in public, but it doesn't mean that you can't share information.
Well, just because we're gonna have a couple of weeks here when we don't meet, so I
That's
tried to make sure that we could discuss the information. and have
And,
clarity
and
as to
for
how-
example, if you send an email that says, Aurora, I just figured out that Greenberg Township is the same demographic as Scio. It's almost the same number of people and the same SEV. Could you get that information for us? And you share it with everyone else? That's fine.
Greenberg Township,
I made it up.
I wanna go there.
Very, very affluent.
I wanna go
Yeah,
there.
it's the same demographic as Scio.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Thank you. That's very clear. Thank you.
Okay. So I think we need a motion to adjourn.
May I ask one more question?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm so sorry. Trying to make use of our time since we're already all here. Would this be an appropriate time for us to talk? I don't know how everyone else felt about it, maybe have a conversation. It was sent to us. You'll get it in the information coming to you from John. The question of the delegation of the committee reviews. About the prices for the pay for the independent committees.
Oh,
And this
okay.
was brought to us as an additional possible task, is the way the provision was written. And I thought it might be helpful I'd like to maybe give an opinion, maybe hear some other opinions on what you might feel. Would everybody have time to take a quick little discussion of that? Did everybody have a chance to at least see it? This is what was sent to us. Yes.
Are you suggesting that the commission should amend the agenda?
Sure.
Because in order to actually take action, we need that.
Okay.
All right, so we have,
Is that in
Is
the-
it, I didn't know if we just wanted discussion. Discussion?
We can discuss that.
Anybody got any ideas? I don't know if
Well,
Jeff wanted to see the
And,
Jeff.
and,
has
and
it.
actually, let me just look at maybe,
Yeah.
it could probably fall under this topic even.
That's what I'm
say-
trying, because it's the
Yeah,
same discussion.
I
of-
understand.
Yeah. Go for it?
Yeah.
Okay. If we look at this was one of the secondary tasks that was brought right before we met and asked for us to address also. I would just like to say that I have some concerns about a brand new group other than John with an additional task and in the timeline that we were told of the 45 days. So I think everybody needs to understand. We're looking at more timeline, and do we think this is something that we'll want to put on a future agenda? Will we want more discussion? I just would like to bring it up for conversation on what everybody else is feeling about it.
all right, I'll chime into that.
That'd be great.
I'm not comfortable undertaking that effort. Because to me, it's starting from ground zero and learning a whole new thing, and our primary task is in front of us. I don't want to have that at risk, getting our decision made in the timeframe. I don't think it's a big risk, but I don't want to take on something that's a total unknown based on that. That's just,
I think that's what I was trying to
feeling.
say, also with the fact that we're all working on how we're obtaining information to make these decisions. That would be another I mean, we're taking 2 weeks just to get our information to do our original task, and I have some concerns that to then look at committee compensation is like another. So any other input anybody want to say now that you've seen the, thank you.
My question is, this is what was proposed. Is this brand new? Are committee members paid at all right now, or these updates?
There are some committees that are paid,
Selective
yeah,
ones,
selected ones.
Okay.
Are those the ones? Cause I
Yes.
noticed we're not on there.
correct.
So we should change that, no.
It,
If this is continuing a current practice, maybe expanding a few more, I would be okay at least looking at it and providing a recommendation to the board. I mean, that's all we're doing is providing a recommendation, right?
Rather than salary recommendation.
We're not setting policy, we're just saying, yeah, yes or no, we think this is worth pursuing to the board. So I would be okay with it.
so I think that, if this is, so are you proposing that you would be looking at all committees at this point? Because then I would like to refer to, and go, I think at that point, if there's a review on all committees for a recommendation, would that be when perhaps I would need to recuse?
Let me amend my comment then, because what I'm looking at is what the clerk prepared, and this is a very short list.
Okay, so we're just
I would
going.
say I'd be comfortable taking on this list specifically, not a complete review.
There's still the potential of a conflict of interest there.
Is that helpful for the board? I mean, is it worth, is our energy worth, is what we're gonna be able to do with that, for example, Jeff's suggestion? Scaling back the scope of the communication, is that gonna be valuable to the board?
Oh, I would think so, yeah.
Well, then why don't we just make it phase 2 and we get our first job done, and then if there's still time, we'll go into overall analysis as Jeff.
Okay, and we can make more decisions at that point. Is that okay? Yeah.
I mean, the only
Okay,
thing
well,
I'd say is like,
future
let's ask for
discussion.
the data now, even though it's a lower tier goal or maybe your goal, the project, let's get the data now.
I would rather not ask for additional data now, but that's,
Okay, fair. Yeah, my time frame is probably not. Okay. Good.
So we're gonna
Jean, did you have
table
thoughts?
for future discussion.
Yeah. That's
How about we do that?
table for future discussion.
I did
Okay,
not see that at all, so that's what I can confusing, but I agree that we shouldn't add to it, but I'm fine making recommendations to the existing.
after we're done with our
Yeah,
primary focus, okay. All right, anything else that, anybody wants to have? Okay, so I go back and, suggest like a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, and a second?
Second.
All right. A discussion? Okay,
As we adjourn.
yeah, all those in favor say aye,
Aye.
Right.
opposed, motion carried, we are adjourned.